So the learning as we conclude the month of Av, we thank our generous sponsor at Eastern Union as a Zecher Nishma Zichas Shagov and Avram Yehuda, as well as Rachel Ba Sham Shadar and Tzvi. The learning of the Torah Chabura should be a tremendous Chos Yil Nishmasa. As well as today on Shabbos Mevarachim, the Daf is being sponsored as a Chos for Yisrael Lesser, whose Bar Mitzvah is today. The learning of the Torah Chabura should be a tremendous Chos as he is Oila into Gadlos. He should be a Ben Torah just like his grandfather. And Emir Tashem, the learning of the Torah Chabura should be a tremendous Chos for him and his entire family, as well as our Chayla Man Viveka Chaim Misar Shalom Zim Reis Zar Baskinandi the Basim Chaim Sayus Mindel Eliyah the President Shalei Shalom Mas Naomi Vashavim Shechano Real Chaim Basmili Brachas of Musa Dinina and Shin Mindel Stephen Vivek Vernon Chles when Nazel Hu Rivka was the Shavin Natal Yisrael Mechlester Besoy Shar Chali Yisrael, and finally sponsored as a special Schos Refuah Shlema for Shlema Ben Rezel Amir Tashem. He should have a Refuah Shlema B'Karayv. We pick it up on the top of Lamed Beis Amid Aleph, the second line. Tanu Rabbanan. We just finished a lengthy discussion about a lulav gezula, a stolen lulav, and on a similar theme, says the Gemara today. Tanu Rabbanan Succah gezula. What is the status of a stolen sukkah of a mesachek b'shas harabim, or one that puts up his chach that makes the sukkah of b'shas harabim a very, very prevalent issue, a very big point of controversy. Certain times people just put up sukkahs in the middle of the street and they say, yeah, what's the difference? Big difference. It could be a stolen sukkah. So says the Gemara, what is the halacha of lezer paisel v'chachamim machshirim? Says the chachamim, it is kosher. Says Rav Nachman, let's explain this a bit deeper. Amar Rav Nachman, machloikes b'shatoykev es chaveiroi. You grab your friend, v'oitzio misugasa, and you pull him out of his sukkah and you steal his sukkah. For Rav Eliezer l'taimei, why does Rav Eliezer hold his puzzle? The Amar, he says, ein adam yizich chayvasai b'sukas shel chaveiroi. It's not your sukkah. Says Rav Eliezer, you're not yoytze the mitzvah. And so on that point, says the Gemara, let's understand this. If land can be stolen, sukkah gzuli. Therefore, it's going to be a stolen sukkah. And if you're going to tell me you can steal land, then what is it? Sukkah shuli. Then it's a borrowed sukkah. And therefore, that is why Rav Eliezer says, whichever way you cut it, either it's stolen or it's borrowed, it's not yours. Therefore, you're not yoytze the mitzvah, says Rav Eliezer. V'Rabbanan the Chacham hold its kasha. What are they hold the taimei according to their reasoning? You can yes be yoytze your mitzvah with your friend's sukkah, and they as well hold v'karkein and exeles. And the land cannot be stolen, which we see is now a fundamental debate between the Chacham and Rav Eliezer. Can land be stolen? Chachamim say no. Rav Eliezer doesn't make a difference. Say the Chachamim can't be stolen. So what is this sukkah? If you grab your friend, throw him out of the sukkah, and sit in this sukkah, what is it? But sukkah shuli, and it's a borrowed sukkah. And we just said the Chachamim hold that you can yes be yoytze your mitzvah with your friends sukkah, and therefore Eliezer says it's possible. The Chachamim say it's kosher. Avol, that is one case. That's one scenario. Grab your friend, throw him out, and sit in his sukkah. Avol, what about the more classic, quintessential way that someone thinks of a stolen sukkah? Avol gazal itim sikich bahem. You stole wood and you put chach on them. Divrei hakol, everyone holds ein lo ela demei eitim. All you have to do is pay back the value of the wood, and the sukkah is yours. So even though Rav Eliezer is going to hold your yes, yoytze, your mitzvah, if you steal the wood, because all you have to pay back is the value of the wood. But the sukkah, the wood itself, you're able to be yoytze your mitzvah. Mimai, where do I see this? Says the Gemara, Midiktani, from the fact that it says, Dumya dershas harabim. What were the two cases we start off today on the second line? A sukkah gezulor, you put up the schach and dershas harabim. Marush Harabim, Karka Lav Didehu, Sukkanami Lav Karka Didehu. Just like Rosh Harabim is not your land, so too Sukkah is not your land. And therefore says the Gemara, that is the case that's a machlekes. When it's not your land, what's the case of not your land? When you grab your friend and you throw him out of the sukkah. But in a more classic and typical case of a sukkah gezula, when you steal the wood and you put the schach on it, in that case, but everyone is going to agree, all you have to do is pay back for the value of the wood, and you will yes be yoytze your mitzvah. Says the Gemara, a bit of a story to bring out this point. Ayisabta, there was a woman, also like Amid Rav Nachman. Amr Alei, she said to him, Reish Galusa, the Reish Galusa, V'kula Rabbanan Reish Galusa, B'sukkah Zula V'yasvi. They're all sitting in a stolen sukkah. Savcha, she's screaming. No, everyone's in a stolen sukkah. V'loi ashkach, why no one listened to her? Says the Gemara, why did no one listen to her? Rav Nachman Excuse me. Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman didn't listen to her. Omro le, she said to him, Itza dahavale davua tlas meya v'timni sari avde. So she says to Rav Nachman, a woman whose forefather has 318 servants, referring to Avram Avinu. Savcha screams, Kamaycha in front of you, and you don't listen to her? I don't understand. I'm telling you, everyone's in a stolen sukkah. Why is no one paying any attention to me? Amr Lahus, Rav Nachman finally responds and says, Rav Nachman, let me explain to you what's going on over here. Amr Lahu, Rav Nachman, P'ita hi da. That this woman, what does she have? What's her claim? They stole my sukkah. You know what the claim is? On the value of the sukkah, on the wood of the sukkah. Like we said a moment ago, if you steal wood and you build it into a sukkah, according to all opinion, is not a problem. This woman's a crier, and all you have to give her is the value of the wood bilvad. But the sukkah is a kosher sukkah, and it's not a problem that all the chachamim are sitting in it. That's a story that brings out our point, that if you steal wood and build a sukkah, might it be the nicest thing? You're over in Gezelit, you have to pay back for that which you stole. But lemaisa, the sukkah is kosher. Amr Ravina haikashura dematalasa. Says Ravina, the beam of a sukkah the gzula that is stolen, after Rabbanan Takanta, the Rabbanan made a takana, misha takana is marish, because of the takana of the beam, which we'll explain in a moment, and the sukkah is kosher. What's the takana of a beam? Takana is, if I steal a beam and I build it into my whole house, do I have to break down my house? Says Chazal, no. You know why? Because if we require you to do that, no one's going to ever want to return that which they stole, and rather we let the person just pay back the value. Similarly, if you steal a beam and you build it into your sukkah, that we're going to say the sukkah is okay, and just pay back the value of the beam. But on this, the Gemara explains, Pshita, of course, this exact same case. What was the previous case? It was a case of wood. And in the previous case, what do we say? Just pay back the value. So too over here, it's the same thing. What's the big chiddush over here? Takonas marish. Explains the Gemara. I would have thought maybe only by wood, which is a common case. But maybe this is not such a common case. Maybe you're not yotzin, you have to actually return the beam. Kamash malon, that you're yes yotzin, all you have to give back is the value of the beam. So when related din, bring out a similar point, but a bigger chiddush. But in this, explains the Gemara, Hanimili, this is only B'gai Shiva. Within the 7 days of Sukkah is that we don't make you break down your Sukkah to return the beam. Avlubasar Shiva, Hadar Be'ena. But after 7 days, you got to return the beam like you took it. V'chavroy Betina, but the Gemara says, but if you attach the beam with tit, or if you attached it with cement and you really built it strong, Filach Hashem Anami Yahavla, Demei Tana, even after the 7 days, all you have to give back is the value of the beam and not the beam itself. So 2 cases bringing out the same point, that when someone steals wood, what do you return? The value of the wood. And are you to the mitzvah? The answer is unequivocally yes. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned in a Mishnah, Yavesh, pasal. A lulav, which is dry, is pasal. And Rav Yehuda machshir. Rav Yehuda says it's kosher. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, let's explain this machlokes. Belulav dirabanan, savri makshin lulav esrik. When it comes to a lulav, the Rabbanan hold, a lulav is like an esrog. My esrog, by Yehuda, has to be beautiful, af lulav, by Yehuda. Has to be beautiful, and a dried lulav is not beautiful. For Rav Yehuda Savar, no. Loi makshin lulav esrog, we do not equate the two. Avol be'esroik, divrei akol adar be'inan. Everyone agrees by an esrog, it has to be hadar, it has to be beautiful, and everyone will agree that a dried out esrog is not kosher. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Ubelulav labei Rav Yehuda hadar. What did we just say? We just said by an esrog, everyone agrees it has to be beautiful. But by a lulav, it's a point of contention. Rav Yehuda says no, the Chacham say yes. Says the Gemara, Ubelulav labei Rav Yehuda hadar, is that true? V'tanam, but we learned in a Mishnah. Rav Yehuda Omer, Yagdenu memalo. Rav Yehuda says that if you have a spread out lulav, you got to tie it on the top. My timer. Why does Rav Yehuda require you to tie the lulav together? Lamish under by other. Seemingly, you know what the reason is? Because you want to have a beautiful lulav. So too over here, a dried out lulav should not be kosher. Why are we saying that by an esrog everyone agrees it's possible, but by a lulav Rav Yehuda holds it's kosher? Seemingly the same way Rav Yehuda should require you to bind it together is because he needs it to be hadar. Answers the Gemara, Allah, that's not the reason. Kenetani Taim, you know what the reason is? Rav Yehuda Omer Mishum Rav Tar ben Kabos Tamarim. The Torah calls a lulav a Kabos Tamarim, the branch of the date palm. Kafus, it has to be tied up. Kafus v'mayaparud, and if it's spread out, yichtefenu tie it up, v'lichtefenu tie it up. So says the Gemara, The reason why Rav Yehuda requires you to tie up the lulav is not because it has to be beautiful. And in reality, a dried out lulav, Rav Yehuda would say is kosher. You know the reason why Rav Yehuda makes you tie it up is the Gzeirus like of Kappas Tamarim. It has to be kafus, it has to be bound up. Asks the Gemara, is that true what you just told me? Another question, that is it true that Rava holds doesn't have to be beautiful, but tonight we learn to the Mishnah. Rav Yehuda says you only bind a lulav with something of its own type. My time, but what's the reason? Seemingly the reason is it has to be beautiful. And if it's not the same type as the binding, it's not beautiful. Says the Gemara, that's not the reason. Rava explains that the dikla. Really, you're able to tie up the lulav with an ivy, a sieve, or ikra, the dikla, the trunk of the palm tree. So what's the reason that it has to be b'minai? Ella, the reason is, my time with Rav Yehuda the Hasam, the Kosavar, lulav sarich eged. It's a different thing. Rav Yehuda's of the opinion that Rav Yehuda holds, a lulav needs to be bound together, and therefore binding it is not some additional nice beautification aspect, but rather is intrinsic. The binding is intrinsic, and therefore v'maisi mana achrina mina achrina. And if you bind it with a separate entity, havle chamisha minim, will be a fifth min. And that's the reason why. So it says the Gemara, you know why Rav Yehuda requires to bind it? Kapos tomorrow and bound together. We found it has to be bound together with the same type. Why? Seemingly for beauty. Says the Gemara, no. That's not the reason. Rav Yehuda holds that binding is so intrinsic and integral that the binding itself is part of the mitzvah. And therefore, if you bind it with an item which is not normal, it's going to be considered a fifth min and not arba minim. And that would be an issue. Says the Gemara, okay? You defended lulav. Let's move on to esrog. 6 lines to the bottom. With esrog, by Rav Yehuda hadar. By an esrog, does Rav Yehuda require it to be beautiful? Like we said, everyone holds it has to be beautiful. Vatani b'learn to the brayso. Arbas minim shebelulav kishem shein payis chasin mehem kachem asivan aleim. Just like you cannot subtract from the daled minim, you cannot add on. Loy matzah esrog. Therefore, if you didn't find an esrog, loy avi loy parish loy rimain. Don't use instead of the esrog a quince, a rimain, a pomegranate. And not a lemon, it's an esrog or nothing. Kemushin, ksherim, if it's withered up, it's kosher. Yeveshim sulim, if it's dry, it's basal. Rav Yehuda Omer, and this is the clincher. Af yeveshim, you're even allowed to use a dry lulav. Ve'omer Rav Yehuda continues to explain. Ma'isa, as you move over to Lamed Aleph on the base, says Rav Yehuda Ma'isa b'nei Krachim. There was a story in the large city. They would give over the loving to their children as an inheritance, and therefore, what do we see? Says the Gemara. We saw a minute ago that Rav Yehuda said everyone held that the esrog has to be a hadar. We see clearly Rav Yehuda disagrees. We see clearly that Rav Yehuda is holding does not need to be a hadar. Answers the Gemara, Amr Lahem, Yisham Raya. You're asking from there. Ein Shasat Chak Raya. That obviously was quite a matter of the degree of need that they used to give over the lulav and hesek to the children, so you cannot bring a raya from there. But says the Gemara, Ketani Mios, what do we see at the end of the day? They gave their lulav to their children. But Ketani Mios, what do we see at the end of the day? Rav Yehuda Omer, Af Yeveshin Ksherim. On the bottom of the Amid, what does Rav Yehuda teach us? That even a dried out esrog is kosher. My love, esrog, and therefore we see Rav Yehuda does not require hadar, does not require it to be beautiful. Answers Gemara, loy alulav. Rav Yehuda was referring to the lulav, but indeed the esrog, Rav Yehuda would agree, has to be beautiful. And therefore, what we said originally on Amud Aleph, that everyone agrees that esrog needs to be hadar, beautiful. Rav Yehuda agrees. We saw in our brayso, seemingly Rav Yehuda allowed one to something dry. Says the Gemara, that's only by the lulav and not by the esrog. Omar Mar, let's go back into that previous brayso. You cannot add on to the daled minim. Shita, it's obvious. Answers the Gemara, the tema I would have thought, Rav Yehuda. Since Rav Yehuda said, lulav zarach agid, you have to bind up the lulav. Therefore, you would have thought that Rav Yehuda holds if you bring an extra min without binding it, Rav Yehuda is going to hold it's not a problem because it needs to be bound, and if it's not bound, it's nothing. So maybe Rav Yehuda would not have an issue adding on a min. Kamash Malan, that if you add on a min, even if it's not bound together, it's going to be a problem, says the brayso. Amar Mar, great, that was one part of the brayso. Another part of the brayso, you don't have an esrog, don't bring a quince, don't bring a pomegranate, don't bring a lemon, don't bring anything. Says the Gemara, pshita, of course. Answers the Gemara, you should bring even a lemon. There's a hablamine, you should bring a quince and a lemon and a pomegranate in the place of an esrog. Why? You know why? We don't want people to forget that there was a din of an esrog. And if a time is that they don't have esrogim, you take your lulav, adas, and rubber, not an esrog, people will forget it. So you would have thought, bring a quince, just so you don't forget the requirement of Daled Minim. Explains the Gemara, no, don't do that. You know why? Because Kamash Malan didn't enough the Chorba Mined all times that it will become a destruction. They're going to think that you're even allowed to use a quince and a pomegranate, and there could be a terrible destruction, and therefore we're not going to allow you to use that, even in a place of an esrog, even when we're nervous that you're not going to have anything else. Still, do not take your quince or your lemon for your Daled Minim. Says the Gemara, okay, we finally finished. Esrog hadar, lulav hadar, machlekes by lulav. Everyone agrees by esrog. A brayso, which seemingly was a question, Rabbi Yehuda. We defended that by saying something about lulav. We went through two other parts of the brayso with regard to adding on. What was the chiddush? We went through the part of the brayso. What's the chiddush of not bringing a rimoin or a quince? Now says the Gemara, Tashema. Let's flip the coin. Let's bring a raya that an esrog needs hadar. Tashma esrog ayashem basel and all that is basel. Rav Yehuda machshir. Rav Yehuda says it's kosher. Tiyofta the Rava tiyofta. Says the Gemara. That's it, Rava. I'm sorry, you are wrong, and that is how the Gemara concludes, because we see that there is an opinion that holds you could use an old esrog, seemingly an old esrog is not beautiful. So we see that not everyone agrees you need a beautiful esrog, and that is how Rava is unfortunately disproven. Says the Gemara, 1 second, let's go back. Is it true that the lulav esrog does not need to be hadar? We learned in the Mishnah. Hayar kikaris, even esrog is green like a leek. Rameir machshavi the baisel. Rav Yehuda says it's kosher. Rav Yehuda says it's basel. La mishon the bay hadar. Why is it basel? Because it's not hadar. Seemingly a question. Answers Gemara loy mishad loy kamar peira. It's not a complete peri. And the truth is, this comes out to be a chiddush that it's not a complete peri. That's why Rav Yehuda says it's basel. Explain to Mafarshim. But if it is a complete peri, even if it's green, it's going to be kosher. No one has to be nervous for the green esrogim, because green is only an issue when it's not a complete peri, when it's raw and it's not ripe. But if it is ripe, it's going to be kosher even if it is green. Tashema says the Gemara, Shir Aser Cotton, what is the size of small egg? So Gameir Mekego is a walnut, Rav Yehuda Mekebea like an egg. Lam Mishon the Bayadar, why does it have to be that size? Rav Yehuda says an egg, seemingly because you want it to be beautiful. Like Mishom again, the Loi Gemara Pri, which is not a complete entity without that. Tashema says the Gemara, let's try again. What's the maximum size of an esrog? Two hands with one esrog. Give Rav Yehuda, Rav Yisrael, excuse me. Rav Yehuda says shnayim b'yadei achas. Excuse me, 2 in one hand. Rav Yossi says 2 in one esrog in 2 hands. My taima, what is the reason why Rav Yehuda says what he says? It has to be beautiful, and therefore having such a large esrog is not beautiful. Says Marloi, Kivan Damar Rabba. Since Rabba says lulav b'yamin v'esrog b'smol, gotta get your lulav in your right and esrog in the left. Zimnin the machalfulei, you're gonna have to switch them. Also have a chenu, also have sule, and they come to passel up the esrog if it's so big, so you're not gonna be able to maneuver them in your hands. And that's the reason why Rav Yehuda requires it to be a smaller esrog, not because necessarily it's more beautiful. Ask the Gemara one final question. Rav Yehuda, according to Rav Yehuda, ksiv hadar. How hadar bilana mishana l'shana? What does it mean? Hadar, it means that it's beautiful. It doesn't mean beautiful. Excuse me. It means hadar, that it grows from year to year, and that is the drasha of esrog. Says the Gemara. Okay. Let's move on to the next part of the Mishnah. What was the next part of the Mishnah? Shal Asherah, Shal Ir Nidachas. You're not allowed to take a lulav from an Asherah tree or a city that is condemned to be destroyed in Ir Nidachas. Says the Gemara, Shal Asherah Apostle. Is that true that a Asherah tree is possible? Don't take it. So how can you tell me about Asherah as possible? Answers Gemara, Asherah de Moshe Askinan. We're talking about Asherah tree all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu to Kavasei. De Kavasei Michta Shira. It's considered to be chopped down. There's no shear to it, and therefore they Kenami and there's a right that the Ketani David here in Nidachash Mamina. Our case of a shira tree is similar to Nir Nidachas, that it's not kosher because it's lacking in the shira. It's like it's chopped down, it's ready to be destroyed. Similar to Nir Nidachas, but it is true a lulav avodah zara would theoretically be able to be used, b'diavad I should say, for a lulav for sukkis. Nikdam Roishai. Let's just get into the next piece of Gemara, as it's a little bit early. Says the Gemara, Nikdam Roishai, if the head of the lulav is chopped off, we said in the Mishnah it's possible. Amar Avuna Loishanu Nikdam. So only if the top is cut off, Avul Nistak, but the top is split open, kosher, it's kosher. Says the Gemara, really? Vinista kosher. Vatani learned in a braysa, lulav kafuf, if the lulav is bent over, turning over to tomorrow's daf, lamebezam and aleph, kavutz, sadok, akam, dumi, damagal, pasul, charutz, pasul, dumi, charutz, kosher. Says the braysa, if it's kavutz, if it has thorns, if it's sadok, if it's split open, that's the crucial ingredient. Akam, if dumi, damagal, it's curved, pasul. But charutz, if it's just very hard, then it's pasul. It's not so hard, then it's going to be kosher. What do we see? We see over here that if it's split, it's possible, not like we just said. Amar Papa, Tiavid kehimnik. What is the case where it's going to be kosher is if it's made like a himnik, and that is going to be the difference in the brayso that says the split lulav is possible or kosher. We'll pick up from here.